Hello guys, let me first start with wishing you Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and thanking you very much for supporting this channel and making this purchase, and I hope you're going to consider this in the future. This reading is going to consist of two parts. First part, important one though, even though it seems to be kind of like a little bit generic. Why is it important? They're general energies. So what does that mean? So let's say we want what we want, right? Let's say we want to buy tiles for the bathroom. So we know what we want to buy, we know our budget and everything else. So we kind of like know our little domain. But there is like a bigger picture. Who is the supplier? What can be done? So you have to work within that system. And this is like what this part is going to tell us. I also drew a rune just to give me basically some kind of like feel for it, and we are going to go in few other cards. These like really important decks. This is Osho Zen. He's like a famous I believe Japanese philosopher. We have karma cards and we have law of attraction. So for example, right, if you for example want to win lottery and you want to send those vibrations out and you have all the negative people around you, that's what's going to tell you. So literally all you would need to do is like stay away from that kind of like stuff, right? So the rune that we got was Vunya reversed. Vunya is a really good rune, even when it's reversed. So this is the rune of happy endings. We are coming into the basically cycle numerologically year number 12, which is basically cycle number 3 numerologically. I'm going to speak a little bit about that later, because oh my gosh, like year number basically 11 is tough. Year number 11 is challenging us on every single thing, and mostly on the things that actually we don't really want to be challenged. So that's something really to take in account. So this is talking about kind influence. This is talking about, hey, look, things are actually going to turn out well, right? It's encouraging rune, but when it's reversed, it kind of gives a little bit of kind of like caution that, for example, in terms of love relationship, maybe we are going to idolize someone. You know what? I say, heck, you know, why not? Usually we are so, I don't know if I want to say jaded. Like, I mean, there are like all kinds of people out there, right? And we are like, oh no, not again, right? So going on the other side, it's probably better, right? But this is also kind of like telling you, put it in perspective. Maybe somebody is looking too good to be true, and that's because he or she is too good to be true. So keep that in mind, because that person might be kind of like a little bit different from what they see. This is like entire year. They are not going to be able to put up the game for a year, especially if you see them on a regular basis. So I am really not worried about that. Also, another thing, if this is referring to business, then it's going to be danger of underhanded dealings, and even those who you consider friends might actually turn on you, and you might not count on them. So again, put that in account when you are making decisions that are including that other people. Now, what I would say with this particular rune, as it kind of like relates for the year number 3, that I would say make sure that at least you give yourself 3 days for kind of like really coming up with an answer. Sort of like, you know, not really mulling it over in these 3 days what to do. Sort of like when you have to reach a decision, put it on a back burner, 3 days on a back burner. When you come back in 3 days, then start deliberating what you want to do. So it's still very good, and this is that protection. Like P is for Vunya. I have my own names. P to me is for protection, and specifically when it comes here, because look, it's kind of like pointing backwards, right? So again, over idolizing means, hey, you know, I have all these friends, you know. I mean, I felt that way when I was moving, and then when the time came, like, I mean, everybody promised, and then one phone call after another, oh, I have a flu, I have this. So basically you see really who your real friends are. And this is exactly what it's saying. That date could be a surprise. So kind of like keep that in perspective. Already. So let's see what else we have. Let me just first get all the cards out. Oops, and you already have it. We have fighting. Oh, why do we have fighting thing? So let's, one on the floor. Wow, this is a lovely one. It's called Forgiveness. I love this one. And let's grab this one here. this is just a general energy. As I said, something in, ooh, this is really lovely. You know, I'm so excited about this year. Let me zoom this in for you so you can actually have a better view of these guys, and I can kind of like give you a little bit more information. So fighting is probably a good kind of like omen, right? Fighting is like that proverbial knight of swords, which always kind of like can tend to be a little bit edgy, because look, he's like kind of like riveted himself in kind of like some kind of concoction that maybe he cannot even get out. So it almost like appears to me that somebody is like, I mean, so full of steam, the steam is coming out, it's even forming, as you can see here, some kind of like thing here on the side, right? So it is kind of like very important over here. What I really see here is like some kind of like edginess over here. What I really see here, and me being an air sign, I can really tell you how this works. Air sign can be the most easy breezy sign, but it can be tornado, it can be a hurricane, right? So what kind of like chance do you really want to take on this, right? So it is really, really important when you're dealing with air to kind of like understand that everything here depends on logic. Air is going to say, yeah, I love you, honey, but you are not showing up on time, you are not doing this, you're not doing this, and hence I am leaving you, right? Air is absolutely able to make that kind of stuff. So fire probably would kind of say, okay, well, let's see, let's come up with an action plan how to do that, right? Where, you know, Pentacles would go, okay, so what can you do for me? Like, let's make it more transactional kind of a thing, right? And kind of like water would go, okay, like, I mean, I really, really feel for you. I'm still going to kind of go and continue with this, right? So it is kind of like talking about an explosive temper and maybe even smoldering rage. And to me, whenever I see people like that, I always know there is pain. And these are strong people. And if you're listening to this, like when you see people who are maybe exploding, you want to do something and you find this like immovable, insurmountable obstacle, these people are conveying some kind of like pain. So when are people getting angry? When their needs are not met. When are people in pain? When their needs are not met. But it's actually even worse when they really feel they will never be met. With anger, like, at least, actually, believe it or not, it's better, because people feel, well, you know, if I do this, like, things are going to be met. So I know it's really hard when you have like something really harsh and edgy coming at you, but maybe you're going to remember my words. The person that you see in front of you raging and having those white knuckles and having all huffing and puffing and maybe being threatening, actually is just like the pussycat in the corner who wants to scratch everything because they're really, really hurting. So this is why they are showing this kind of like armor over here, because they're covering their wounds with armor. And actually, even though this is preventing, helping them not to get more wounds, it's also preventing them of being healed. So, you know, these people who lash at others, they just like simply prevent themselves of getting love and nourishment they need. If this is like us and getting that kind of stuff, we actually need to realize when we get angry, well, wait a minute, what is it that I have to kind of like let this like steam out? Because hey, love is like out there. Love is like literally something we need to kind of open our arms and get it. And if this is like you, that you find yourself in the situation, just kind of like give yourself a big hug. Ask your friends to give you a hug. It has a very, very healing thing. Also, another thing that I really tried and it really works, and I tell to my clients, take ballroom dance classes, take salsa lessons, because holding another human and in something that is enjoyable is going to transfer so much good energy. So I really think, given that this is coming for the ambience and environment we are going to find ourselves in it, that this is really, really talking about that this year is going to be one of the struggle. It's going to be where ambitions will be pushed forward. Many people, especially after year number 11, which is 2, where it's very spiritual, where it's like, really, do I really want to be that kind of person? And here is like, I'm moving forward. So up to this point was like all kind of like those strategizing, but here it is kind of moving forward. So when people move forward, some people try to negotiate and find a deal with others. These are people who are more people oriented. other people try to steamroll through whole thing and kind of like get what they want, right? So you need to understand yourself. So because this is kind of like the general overview, you have to figure out if you really want to be part of something like that. Do you really want something at any cost, or you simply don't want something at every cost, right? Because look what you have over here. You have forgiveness from this other deck, and like, to me, this is like one of those, the loveliest cards. This is the card that, you know, if you can see, we have like these different chakras over here. So we are already here in this high purple chakra. So your number 11 was all the way here. So we are getting more grounded. So this is again about judging and forgiveness. So even though it could be them being mad, being rude, being crude, I can see cussing and swearing and telling people off and a finger. I can see here a whole bunch of things. How you react to it, it's what your challenge is going to be. Are you going to just like simply engage in their pain and kind of like react back with anger? Or are you going to kind of like neglect yourself and just going to help themselves? You see how many challenges you will actually have there. But look, solution is being offered over here. Forgiveness. It's, you know, it's not really about forgiving others in this situation. What I really think that forgiveness has to apply to is that we need to forgive ourselves for having judged others. Because judging others always generates kind of like bad brownie points. There's like somebody here maybe who, you know, these people, they're angry with entire world, and my dad is just like it. I get this very, very much. Like whenever everything is perfect, they are still going to find something. We all have those kind of like negative, you know, Sandy, kind of like negative Nancy, kind of like a people around us. So, and of course, maybe sometimes we just like treat these people with a label on it, right? They say if you really want to kind of go higher, not only spiritually, but in your life, you shouldn't kind of like have things with labels. So cat shouldn't have C-A-T kind of like spelled on it. It's a being that kind of is engaging. You see the difference. It's like reading the energy versus reading the label. So here is like basically simply calling, look, you know, understand what is below and behind that armor, that this person is probably, you know, resenting things. And here, like, I mean, we need to kind of like focus on basically intention. What do they really want? And this kind of, imagine if you manage to kind of develop such thick skin that these things are not coming to you, how wonderful would that be? That's why I see this card, but we still didn't get there, right? This also tells me that it may be a time of family healing. I feel that anybody who have hurt you, who have done something, and you know, families have their own histories, especially if there is money involved, or you know, each family has quote unquote their own way. You know, if you watch Game of Thrones, Lancaster always pays his debts, kind of a thing. Story that we see is kind of like over present, but sometimes this is also very limiting, just like this armor. So this also can actually be part of those dynamics. Now, why am I going in such a long intro to tell you this? This is because you guys are on a trajectory of that year number 3, of wishes being fulfilled, of holding on to past dreams. Over the last 2 years, you have been meticulously changing. You have been setting a new path. You have been setting a new direction. You have been also doing lots of bad things, but now you need to forgive yourself. Look, there is like this hypo, and there is like this kind of like baby over here, right? And the story behind here goes, right, that you know, there was like this Rhonda, I think, Rhino, and kind of like she kind of like has a mother. Her mother has like a drinking problem, but she kind of like really wants to become a family pet. And so one day, kind of like she hears, I think, gunfire or something like that, and all the rhinos scatter, and all of a sudden there is like the small human child that is kind of like caught up in the chaos, right? So Rhonda says, come here, come here. She picks him up and runs to safety. So humans now discover this kind of like pair curled up asleep under a tree, and then what they do, they shoot Rhonda with a sleeping dart. So when she awakens, she is in a garden with a little boy and his family. So this is now becoming Rhonda's new family. So as you can see how things can really change. From some aggression and some kind of like struggle and white knuckles, things can actually work out quite well. And then we are getting this Temperance card. Well, Temperance in the other decks is really shown as an angel who is able to mix this bad and good, because it almost looks like two opposite sides of the equation, right? This is like all the way in the negative, this is all the way in the positive. This is like pretty much what we go to church for, what we pray for, what we hope for. This is like when we are at our best. So I'm not really surprised that actually we got this, like in saying, okay, so there is like this kind of like measurement that needs to happen, and there is like a mix. No, I'm not saying to be in the middle. I'm just like saying that you need to kind of like take every single bolt down from every single thing that you feel guarded, for every single thing that you feel you have made your decision, you have made your verdict over something, because this is also a card of reflection. So if you're going up, and I see many people are going in different direction, because this is a year of advancement. This is a year where we're actually putting things in practice. So if in 2018 you were planning to renovate the house, maybe you're collecting kind of like the ideas, maybe you were kind of getting your estimates. In 2019 you're going to put it in place. If in 2019, you were trying to, let's say, get married and find a proper partner, and maybe you were running in a whole bunch of people and feeling maybe even a little bit disillusioned and now getting more guarded. No, it's actually not the time to get more guarded and put more bolts in it. It's like saying, look, I'm still learning what works and what doesn't work. So that's why this reflection is very important. You're looking back and saying, okay, this did come back to me and I did like it. This came back to me and I didn't like it. So you kind of like figure out, this I don't want to have anymore, and this, I do want to have way more to have of this. But also you're saying, I can tolerate this and I cannot tolerate that. So you're kind of like creating that proverbial line in sand, which is like a little bit different. So this kind of like boundaries are set up different. Only thing, because we are having here like this naked woman instead of the angel and the water. Like the nakedness is always talking about being authentic and being true to yourself. And like the truth, some people say, oh, just say it the way it is. I like to be honest, but I cannot say, well, he's going to dump you, for example, right? The truth also always, and that's where the difference in between good human and bad human kind of comes to play, is like how you render it. Because here it's talking about the truth mixed with kindness is basically something that kind of like dissolves everything negative coming your way, right? So just like think about Vunya reversed, as I told you, 3 days. So when somebody comes at us, we react back. There is like this bad blood, right? And we say things that maybe we didn't want to say. 3 days delay, the steam is out, right? You wake up in a new garden and you realize, oh wow, this person actually really wants this. So how do I meet his or her needs without sacrificing mine? Because at this stage the rational mind kicks in, and remember, this is all about logic. So if you can find a way to present that in a logical way, most likely you're going to be successful. Okay guys, so let me tell you a little bit about this year number 3, because that's also very important. So year number 3, we were technically in the year number 2, but for some of us was year number 11. So what's the difference? 1 and 1 is 2. And so why it was for somebody 11 and for some other 2. Not everybody can all the time be at the highest spiritual level. So we just like resort down to what we can do. So number 2 is about harmonizing. Number 2 is like, how can we actually improve and get along better and work better, right? But number 11 is like taking that to the much higher level, sort of like thinking about mankind. And funny enough, even though it is about good, when is good needed? Good is needed to erase the bad. So lots of bad things happen in year number 11. Lots of things that maybe we need to kind of really work for. So after a year in which other people's needs kind of eclipsed our own needs, now it is our turn. The 3-year is like really simple and more casual, this like 12-month cycle. And what is really, really important, and advise making this big sign and put it on your fridge, what do I want? Right? You're going to see that all the things that maybe you didn't consciously plan, but they're kind of coming up, are actually really kind of like coming back. So your own long-term happiness and fulfillment are really the central issues here. And the 3-year cycle gives you that opportunity to discover and then create what you believe will actually make you happy. Remember, Rune. So what you want is actually attainable, regardless what appears to be standing in your way. Are challenges going to happen? Do you have a clear road? Nope. No, you don't. But as I told you, like, spend a few days to kind of think through it. Make sure that you have a backup plan, because people will surprise you with how unreliable they are. So direction of your happiness will be uncovered, and you will first have to detect and, as I said, heal the sources of your unhappiness, which you will find have as much to do with what is taking place in the world, as I told you, is general, as it does also with your own personal situation, because they're like these two puzzles that have to fit together. So it's going to be about direction we take with personal situations, relationships, and also memories. You will really have to feel what you're feeling, and you will need to express those emotions in a way that is really natural for you. We all have different expressions. Yes, some signs are more aloof, some are like just like too kind of like, opening their kind of like water taps too much and cry easily. But this is not to measure that just because you cry over something that you feel deeper or more. Sometimes people cannot cry because they would just like lose it. Just keep in mind, when you see this person like huffing and puffing, angry, that person is like the one who just cannot allow themselves to do that, because they will fall apart. This is how fragile they really, really are. Remember, happiness is a feeling, it's an emotion, and that only comes from inside. And there will be at least one opportunity this year to feel joy as you have never felt it before. Remember, joy. Remember, what do I want? What kind of joy do I want? So as this 3-year kind of progresses, you are going to find yourself, and this is good, in some kind of spotlight. And you will certainly need to express your alternating fears of failure and success. Yes. If you feel, oh my gosh, I'm not going to succeed, that means you're hesitating. Like for the last 2 years, you have been going through that, thinking through it. So why don't you make these first steps? It's going to be some kind of like release. It's going to be making you feel more comfortable, or who you are, what you are, and where are you now. It's going to be that realistic perspective. Remember the woman under this waterfall. It's kind of like that cleanse. I see myself now. I see myself clearly, right? So this completely a new spectrum of options will open up for you. So it's going to be really important that you're going to see now that you're creating something because you have already created in the past. It was in the back of your head. It was something you noticed, and now the puzzles are coming together, and you're becoming that creative springboard from which you build your future. And you might need to take a few courageous leaps in the dark, as I said. So if you're hesitating to make a first step, and if you're thinking, no, I don't ever succeed, I don't do that, well, no, this time you need to take the step forward, because that is going to completely open this new door. Because fear is really there to teach us. That's what needs to be healed, right? So that's kind of like what is guiding us on that path to develop courage and to know that you are far more capable than you ever allowed yourself to believe. And this is that level of self-acceptance. I am this way. I'm just this way. I'm not trying to be Cindy Crawford. I'm not trying to be Brad Pitt. I'm this way, but guess what? I'm really unique. My kindness, my approach with other people, whatever kind of like works for you, is like something very unique, very authentic for you. So that's going to be part of that self-acceptance. And all of a sudden your leaves will turn to bounds. And this year could turn out to be your most fulfilling year ever. So just remember, that courage is not the absence of fear. Just because you're courageous doesn't mean you clear all that fear. So if you're not afraid also, then courage has nothing to do with that. So what courage really is the acceptance of fear and saying, I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to get through it, whatever is causing it. So it could also be like, some kind of like financial state that you have to go through it. You're wondering how can you put things together. So it's kind of like moving it forward. That's kind of like really, really going to help. So this is kind of like that part telling you that nothing is going to be really rosy. But this year, among many, many years, is one of the best years. So in addition to courage that is going to be kind of like exercised, it's also going to be a year full of lightness and happiness and innocence and peace and truth and friendship, creativity, communication, dealing with younger people or feeling youthful ourselves. We are going to be more beautiful, and of course that's going to start kind of like shifting our personality into something that is lighter and more optimistic, more loving, and it's going to be way more laughter than we had in a while. Of course, keep in mind, in order to get there, that sometimes the kind of like the opposite can come through it. So also, on the outside, we might see people who will try to put us in depression and sorrow and guilt, gossip, lies, enemies, ugliness. Am I talking about politicians? I guess I must be. As you can see, the reason why year number 3 is giving us all this happiness and lightness, it's simply to be the antidote to all of these kind of like other things. So if you experience this kind of like pessimistic or, rejection or coldness, then these kind of like things have their purpose. Those adverse elements often enter our lives in the year number 3 to show us that we maybe equate happiness with really superficial and shallow things. And this year, because the number 3 is represented in tarot with Empress, and it's very female, it's very feminine energy. It is kind of like being quiet strength, being that light and light beam to the others. So just think about the perfect woman. So of course she's going to be challenged with those rude males or rude partners or partners who just like really want to conquer her. So yeah, she can engage back and just become just like one of them, or she can just like have this like kindness and lightness about her and just say, nope, I'm going to be courageous enough to say no to you. Maybe you're not my only choice, and if you are, I don't want you, kind of a thing. So year number 3 is very, very important as far as relationship. It's not asking you just to go and hook up with somebody. Nope, it's not going to work that way at all. So it actually is going to ask and demand independence. You will want to be independent. It's kind of contradiction. You're going to be actually more successful in a relationship by being independent than actually just trying to find somebody just because it's easier in the two. This is going to be a really, really good fit because it's going to be an opportunity to love deeply without constantly worrying about what others think. And the more you have the higher self-esteem, the more you approve of yourself and do what you want to do, the more others will accept you as you are, because they'll be witnessing that transformation, and this like pure beauty is going to come through no matter how you look, because you're going to have that authentic confidence. So when this inner beauty is expressed outwardly, it's really, really hard to resist. And we all know people like that who might not even be beautiful on the surface, but their charisma is like so strong. They just like kind of have to put this kind of like smile on their face and they become irresistible. And usually we see that through smile quite a bit of the times. So anybody who will try to kind of like keep up appearances or having any kind of like displays of false confidence or being bullied, that's not going to work. If you want to pretend that you're happy or fearless, that's not going to work. remember, it's going back to what do I want, and it's going to make you push you through. You need to get there by getting along with the other people, by being kind, by being nice. And that of course means kind of like wiggling through many different people who might still not get this memo. So friends will also play an important role in this year, so make sure that you actually give yourself more time for social interaction, and that's where the independence with relationship is going to kind of come to play, because you will kind of like try to please other people, but you also have to realize that you are important, right? So you shouldn't kind of like spread yourself too thin if you're neglecting yourself. You kind of have to put yourself first, and then kind of like give time to everybody, because if you don't pay attention to your friends, then you're going to lose them, because this year is going to be year of abundance. Just like think about it, it's going to be Christmas all year long. This is how it's going to feel. So how would you feel that very, very good friends like you on Christmas? So keep in mind that you're really thinking about everybody, because it's going to be very, very important for kind of like what kind of brownie points you do that in the future. Because courageous is not only being when there is a fear, there is a struggle, but what when you really can do it, when there is easy to do it, and then you don't do it out of laziness, or you just become arrogant because you feel like you're better than anybody else. Keep that in mind, keep that in perspective, because also individuality is going to be very important. You'll be kind of like creating some kind of like new format of who you are. You can kind of like remove these like bad parts or smoothen them, and kind of like understand that the happiness, this new happiness that you're generating, is also partially because you are actually creating this new optimism. And anybody who is going to have a blatant self-interest is just simply going to be kind of like pushed on the sidelines, and they'll be probably waiting on the next cycle, which is going to come in 9 years, to try it again, right? So also, this is a very creative year. It's a year of communication, expression. So you might want to read, or you might want to write a book, but it's also going to be looking at the images and sound and humor and movies. It's going to be really important. It's almost going to be a big stage, right, this year. So kind of like expression in many, many different elements. Also, as I said, with the rune Vunya reverse, make sure you check the facts for yourself. It's very often in the 3-year that we kind of like really succumb easily to, what do you call it, hearsay, I believe, or somebody who is very loud. Just because you're very loud doesn't mean you're right. So that's why I'm saying give it a delay of 3 days. Somebody says I'm authority, question even that, because the truth is likely to be buried beneath layers of deception or misconception, right? So try to keep an open mind. Also, this year could be a year of appearances. So meaning what appears to be the case must be seen for what it is deep down, not just like what it appears to be, right? Just because you have flowers and something looks really, really nice on the top doesn't mean there's like something really muddy and horrible on the bottom. So just make sure that you correctly understand everything, that you clarify, and that you kind of like are on the same page. And even at that, kind of like still, if you feel that you're betrayed or somebody's like negative, you just like will realize this is just part of the course. Maybe you shouldn't react. Maybe this person is in pain. Maybe this person feels you're going ahead and they are not, and even though it's not your fault, they are being reactive. And take this in account before you actually kind of like deal with other people. Keep in mind that the better person you are, the better everybody around you will become, because it's almost contagious, and this is how good it's going to be. And you're going to really address that feel, as I said. That armor is not going to last, it's going to fall apart. We have to heal all the wounds. We kind of are generating completely this new body. Remember the woman under the waterfall, we are washing it over, we are healing. Just think about for a moment, God is giving you everything new. New health, new body, new possibility, new start. And even though we are going to have share of our problems this year, we are perfectly able to deal with them. The Empress is the perfect woman. She addresses things wisely, and she's kind of like moving it forward with this gentle touch, this loving and kindness and children and pets and creativity and anything that we can give birth to, such as like, I mean, new things, a new personality, new perspective, is going to be really, really important. So the year of optimism, which is very positive, I would just like, I mean, welcome you to enjoy your trip on the tree path, because it's going to be interesting and a creative year to live in. So let's start with the individual signs from this point on. Alrighty, my dear Virgos, what do I have here? Gaia. This is, whenever I see this Gaia card, I'm thinking about you. You have volatility. Wow, Shaman. I have a special relationship with this, because whenever I actually shuffle cards, the very first time I get them, I want to see if you're going to get along. Sometimes it's simply not a good fit. This card came through. That was the first card that I actually really got, and it's really talking about somebody who has seen everything, who has dealt with everything, and it kind of like does make sense with you guys are checking things with a fine tooth comb. And Island Solitude, it's very clear that this is like that. This is like the Hermit card that I have in the other decks. Okay, so let me kind of like speed up on the rest of this shuffle. All right, Virgo, lots of cards on the table. So let's start kind of tackling these quarters, because I want each kind of like vertical to represent one of your quarters in the upcoming year. So it's going to be very interesting. Your card showed up again, so it's Solitude in here. This is kind of like that third quarter, so we are talking really something pre your birthday. Keep in mind that year number 3 that I was talking about is also shown over here. So you see this is transitioning from year number 2 to year number 3. It is going to be very, very important. So let's backtrack and go back to January. You're getting this beautiful card, Gaia. And Gaia is, as I said, something I always connect with Virgos. It's kind of like something very earthy, and like, you know, it's Earth Mother, Goddess, and it's kind of connecting also to that number 3, that kind of like that energy that we have this, right? So it's kind of like the theory that Earth is basically a living being. We are just maybe little microbes or viruses, the way you want to look at it. We live on top of that. So it is like something, like, I mean, that is beautiful, something that is kind of like personified like as a goddess. So in, I think, Greek mythology, she is daughter of Chaos, and she was the mother and wife of Uranus. And you heard about Uranus, which is basically considered heaven. It is actually her body that really we walk upon every day, and you being an earth sign, I really don't have to say much or explain much, right? Because you do understand how health is important, and from earth signs you are really kind of like going the direction what is kind of health going to bring. So you're paying attention to a kind of like food you eat, and also kind of like what you give back, that you don't litter, and that you kind of like really create a full cycle that is really, really important, right? So this is kind of like that survival understanding that kind of like goes back and forth, right? Look at her, she's like so beautiful, she's basically hugging this entire planet. So Gaia is offering us fruits and trees and food and everything, right? So it's almost like suggesting that receiving. So receiving can be a sacred act if your intention is to honor spirit. It's very kind of like holy, as giving when performed with a humble and open heart is really, really important. So that's actually even more truer when receiving much needed nurturing. So remember that I said it's not going to be only you giving to other people, but it's going to be what you want. So you also need to allow other people to nurture you. When I say allow, don't have that armor, remember that fighter, like, oh, it's me against the world. No, And especially here, you also have this Queen of Water. I'm going to get to that in a second. So this is kind of like double messaging and saying, right, it's very, very important to understand that something you'll be going through in this first quarter can go all the way back to your childhood. Why? It could have been some kind of conditioning, and I can kind of elaborate this a little bit more when I see this here, because there was like something that maybe formed habit. Maybe it was like something that that actually is really, really not helpful, and it is like really not beneficial to you at this time, right? So those are those wounds that I was talking about in the year number 3. Those wounds right now can simply be healed, can simply kind of like be, they have to be tended to, right? And one way to achieve this is to actually really nurture yourself, and also to allow others to nurture you. Remember, it's going to be one of those things. You will never go wrong about giving things out, but if you give too much and you neglect yourself, that's not going to work either. So consider the actions that you take that are self-nurturing, right? So really, what comes to your mind when you think about that, right? So what is really beneficial? What is it you're doing kind of that is maybe ritualistic, right? And so what is really important for your body, for your soul, for, you know, for your emotions to be there, to be nurtured, right? This doesn't mean somebody just has to give it to you what you want. It doesn't really work that way. This kind of like more works into, I'll give you what you need and you go from there, right? Kind of like that kind of a dealio over here. So I have here strengthening bonds, which is like this proverbial Ace of Wands. And look at this. So she's walking through this garden, but it was reversed. And then I have discontent and boredom, and I have a page of hair. So there is like something here, as I said. It clearly showed to me that you're really going in your past. There's like something from the past which maybe really made you happy. Maybe it's simply talking about dreams unfulfilled, something that you really, really wanted. And maybe some of you just like went to, oh, I'm too old, too fat, to this, to that, fill in the blank, right? Too blank. But this is no longer going to be sustainable. Like Gaia is saying, Virgo, I'm not going to let you do that. You're better than that. So you will have to decide what from the past is no longer working. You're simply needing to face that truth. You're simply needing to kind of like go and fly in that direction, right? This content and boredom always like happens when good things are happening and we are just like letting life pass us by. So this can be as simple as maybe having suffering a little bit kind of like winter blues over here that can happen, right? Because yeah, at this time of the year, especially if you live in the northern hemisphere where we don't have enough sun, it can be a little bit depressing. But look, then you're getting the second card, which again talks about nourishing. And I don't know if you can see this card, how wonderful this is, almost like those, I don't know if you can see this like sparkles here on my table over here. So receptivity, it basically represents again that feminine quality, like kind of like water and emotions. And if you can see, her arms here are extended upwards to receive, and she's kind of like completely immersed in the water. You can see this lotus coming here to the surface and opening up, right? So there's like no head over here. So it's really suggesting there is like no kind of like that busy or aggressive mind to hinder her pure receptivity. And she's kind of like filled with, she kind of like continuously kind of like nurture herself, this kind of like it's going in this kind of one process, and she kind of like brings this kind of gratitude for whatever life brings. So you know, this water goes up and evaporates, it comes down in the rain, so it's this big cycle that is happening. So this is really talking about some kind of like gratitude, and you had the nurturing and nourishing and gratitude and sensitivity and intuition. This is also talking about compassion. These are all basically those baselines for the year number 3. You looks like you're going to go maybe through the period where you're going to ask for your answers, where you will reassess the previous year. You might feel a little bit disillusioned, but you're going to snap out of it after saying to yourself, okay, let me try to get some answers. Why did this happen this way? Why certain things from the past did not work this way? Why did other people let me down? And then you're going to actually feel overwhelmed with a sense of compassion, with the sense that maybe people did that because they had their own issues. They maybe have been jealous and they were expressing things in that way. You're going to realize how big of a heart you actually will have by simply just understanding what is really going on. You're not going to see things in the same way. You're not going to be reactive. You're not going to kind of like put things and shuffle people aside just because, well, I guess it didn't really work in the kind of like same process. So it's going to be really lovely. The opening of the year and closing on this first quarter are going to be so beautiful and gentle and all-encompassing. Going to be certain things over here that you might be kind of like wondering. So sort of like we are talking here, February might be a little bit tricky. February might be that you're thinking about something old, needs to get stronger, and somehow you're failing to do that. Maybe you're failing because the other person is kind of dragging you down, but these are not your problems, Virgo. These are their problems. And as I know, it could be sad observing it, like, I mean, they're sinking and they're doing it. You still can offer this nurturing quality to them. You are still there for them. This doesn't mean that you have to only be there. This doesn't mean that you don't have to open, because that stagnating energy is not what I see in your cards in this particular year. And we are getting into Volcano. And that's kind of like the only card that kind of like took me by surprise, right? So here we are talking about volatility. This is talking about this like big kind of like, I believe, Hawaii volcano that kind of like it's kind of like considered almost like God in the natural kind of like belief. It's considered passionate and volatile and it's very capricious, right? And it's like one of those deities, I think they call them, right? So when we see this like ribbons coming down as we see them kind of like in 2018, it's a kind of like very scary proposition, and it's really nothing that you can kind of like snooze at, right? So this volatile and unpredictable nature is widely known in spite of science efforts to kind of like figure out why is this happening. So I feel the second quarter, and this kind of does make sense seeing where you're heading. It might be really volatile time for you because it's going to predict unexpected changes. Remember that warrior that I told you, that steam coming out? Maybe that warrior is you. Maybe you need to let your steam out, because this is talking about making inquiries, asking questions, demanding answers. Maybe you get those answers, and maybe initially you will feel, okay, I need to nurture myself, I need to nourish myself. I feel bad that these people had to do that. I feel bad that they are behaving this way. But at the same time, I'm probably angry, and I'm having my needs not met, and I'm not behaving this way. So this is simply somebody's letting off the steam. But guess what? That armor is coming down. And remember that third card that we had in the journal thing is also forgiveness and this time for reflection. This kind of like time to kind of like understand that we all have ability to have those extremes, right? So it could be something that is kind of like very powerful, that can kind of really shake you up. And maybe you thought there was some kind of like foundations that you already done and done with, oh, check mark, done, put a fork in me, I'm done. But there will be some kind of new events, and although these events may rock your world, you need to know that Spirit is the guiding force behind them. So it is a matter of finding your trust that life knows what it's doing, right? And kind of like go with this. This particular card also tells us that you will need to make adjustments quickly. Just imagine hot lava is coming down. You need to kind of figure out in a second or less what you do. However, like, I mean, rest assured that good things are going to come out of it. And this is like a really, really interesting card, because again, it's kind of like weird that I had a Gaia with Queen of Cups over here, or receptivity, and now I have Volcano with Rebirth. And to me, this actually makes complete sense. Look what we see. we see here a camel. Well, I really believe this is Nietzsche's book over here, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, I believe. And it is about the story about this lion and a boy and a camel, right? So we see here a camel. Camel is basically sleepy, it's slow, it's very much like earth, like your element. But in this particular story, right, the camel is really thinking that she's a mountain, right? She's like a little sleepy, she's maybe a little bit dull, and maybe she's a little bit too self-satisfied. So remember what they said, self-satisfied is not going to work, not in this year. So camel lives in the delusion, like thinks he's, instead of like the hump, he thinks he's a mountain peak. And also he is like very concerned what other people think. Oh no, this is not a hump, this is like a mountain peak, etc., etc. But look, something that starts to emerge from camel is a lion. And that will be that volcano. That will be like, oh, this is big roar coming through it, right? And this is like what we realize, what we have been missing in life. Maybe you felt stuck for a while. Maybe you felt stuck in 2018 and now it's time to nurture yourself, and it's nurturing yourself is kind of breathing a new life. And then maybe finally when you give yourself this needed nurturing and you put that kind of apparatus back to work, you are kind of like feeling that volcano, you're feeling this anger. Oh my gosh, what was I missing all this time? So like we are actually able to say no to demand. So the second quarter, you're not going to let people walk over you anymore. No, not going to happen, right? So that's kind of like the lion position here. Like you're moving out of the crowd, you're alone, you're proud. That's the independence that I told you. You are roaring your truth. But that's not the end, because the very final stage is like this emerging child. And it's kind of like something innocent and something spontaneous, and we don't have either dull rebellious energy over here. So whatever the space is that you are in right now, I don't know, sleepy and depressed or roaring and rebellious, you need to be aware that you're going to evolve into something completely new if you allow it. It's going to be clearly time for growth and time for change. I really like it because, of course, there are going to be certain things that are going to bother you. Remember what I said. You might feel, oh, I'm giving all the time, and what am I getting back? Kind of a thing, right? This giving and receiving will need to be addressed. Maybe you're going to just be fed up of maybe somebody treating you like a wallet, or, you know, somebody always violating your boundaries, and you feel like, oh my gosh, when is this going to stop? I really don't feel anywhere that you have issues giving, but you certainly kind of like are going to not pay attention to certain people in your life anymore. Because I really feel you having some people who are so negative, who are such bad influence, that you almost like feel this cloud coming over you, and maybe this kind of like volcano was already brewing inside of you, but you kind of like didn't say anything. You were trying to be polite, you were trying to kind of like strengthen that bonds with them, but the whole interaction was leaving you a little bit isolated, kind of like being felt kind of like pushed aside. So you're not even bothering about standing your ground. We have here another heated object, the sun, and we see a proud warrior. But this is reversed. You kind of like are thinking, do I really need to fight about it? I am losing so much energy. And maybe this is why this explosion needs to happen. Maybe certain things just will need to be cleared out. And you know what happens when you have explosion like that? Sometimes you just kind of like don't want to have that kind of relationship. It is like certainly something that you have bottled up. Remember the warrior, remember that fighting card. You're letting the steam out. It is really, really important, because something new is growing, and you're having this like laughing Buddha. You're having this ton of water. This ton of water, look, he's having these beautiful tulips going around, and like this kind of like, you know how they have like this mythology of 108 times repeating your wishes is going to bring you luck. So this is, again, I really think it's going into kind of like that patience. because this card of Temperance is also a card of patience. It's a card of forgiveness. And you're going to realize that all of a sudden, that big burden, that big maybe camel, maybe you're going to find that you felt in some kind of like rut, that you can be much more than you were, and all of a sudden you're going to feel at peace. The second quarter, as I said, is going to be something that you really need to spend to readjust, because all of these cards are telling me maybe you have been struggling, maybe you have been fighting, maybe you tried to reason with somebody, maybe you have given him way too much or too little. This is now falling in balance to a point that you're going to emerge in a completely different way as something completely lovely, as something completely different. So it might be really tricky. I'm going to put on my calendar avoid Virgos from end of March to end of June. But then something is going to happen. Well, maybe not end of June. Like in June, there's like a huge turnaround. You guys are completely different. It's almost like, you know how the snake sheds its skin? This is like something new happening in your life. And now we have this like huge breakthrough. Huge. With this card, Shaman, which I'm really thinking like, you guys are probably getting this understanding that this is not your first life, that you have lived different lives, and there is like this understanding of the soul of the other people. Remember how you were fighting here with what other people say on the surface versus kind of like really comprehending what they really feel inside. But it's not all about other people, because as I said to you, it's like about what do I want and how do I actually consider and communicate this further. So here we are talking about somebody who knows everything, every emotion known to man, suffering, joy, visions, spirit, you know, everything that really exists with the spirit is really kind of like doing it here. There's also somebody who is traveling behind that veil of reality. I mean, science is finally starting to realize all of these things that shamans had on their purviews. I'm trying to remember what's that herb called. I cannot really think of it, but I know just the active ingredient is called DMT. And DMT is now emerging as God's molecule. Ayurveda, I believe it's called. It's kind of concoction of few herbs, and when you cook it, you get this like DMT kind of like structure. So DMT activates our pineal gland. Pineal gland is really like where we kind of like understand this like bigger level of happiness and bigger level of understanding, right? So this is also talking about something that is very familiar for you, like kind of like how to address our health, and it could be some kind of like illness and addressing something, but it doesn't necessarily have to be physical illness, because illnesses can be physical, emotional, or psychological, right? But it could be really due to soul loss or psychic intrusions or ancestral karma or any other spiritual causes that could be contributing to, and kind of like a manifest condition that maybe you currently have. So this is clearly talking about addressing it, attending to it. So whatever methodologies or remedies you pursue, so whether you're choosing allopathic way or alternative way or even a combination, healing your spirit must be number one priority. So you are kind of like attempting this during the summer of 2019. So that's, we are talking July, August. Well, sort of like it could be your birthday as well over there, right? So what is really important here to understand is that the deepest spiritual wound, and we are going back to that warrior, because I can see this clearing, I can see this like you're lifting yourself up, I can see you establishing completely new order in your own life. So deepest spiritual wound is the illusion of being separate from that source or God, whatever kind of like name you give it. It's kind of like that mind trick, Jedi mind trick, right? So this is your time for deep healing, and it's starting with your relationship with spirit, with God. And that means like, are things in balance? Are you kind of like understanding where is your place under the sun, right? So you need to also choose thoughts. That's the year number 3. It's like fully coming to display, that positive thoughts, the spiritual thoughts. You also had crown chakra. So this is like that third eye chakra. So you are literally opening to God. You're literally, especially in this quarter, this is the third quarter, your receptivity to something is going to be unbelievable. So these thoughts are going to be basically results. So choose your thoughts wisely and choose them that they support wholeness and well-being. So anything kind of like darker or that is kind of like shadow, it's going to appear as well, but then observe them and just like let them dissipate. Let them kind of like say, look, yeah, thank you for being here. I had to learn that lesson, but now it is really time to really detach from them, because this is really the next card that you have over here. And detach, it is a karma card. Look at her. She is walking out from this proverbial things did not work for me, or things can work better for me, and she is giving her a peace offering. This is the card of justice. This is the card of freedom. This is a card of you don't want to belong in this certain kind of like structure. Maybe, you know, you have been doing, you're trying to be diligent. Your sign really always likes to be diligent very much. But this is kind of like getting to the point that right now it is your heart that is opening and you're creating that huge energy that you will have capacity of doing. Look at this, year number 3 is like showing up for you over here. You're coming out from something. Just as I told you here, something new is going to emerge. Something that you cannot even conceive right now, and that something is going to be absolutely lovely. So everything that I told you about year number 3, look at that summarized in this Empress picture. She is showing this growth and creativity in her head and her heart and openness and giving and nurturing. What do the two of them have in common? Look at their palms. It's kind of like that offering that is kind of being made. So offering is being made, but you are also taking steps for yourself. You see, they're like two things. Maybe simply means that what things are not working for you, you simply need to kind of like let it go. This also can talk about if you have unproductive relationship, if you're dealing with something that maybe shouldn't be there. Maybe somebody needs to be let go. You know what they say, let this bird fly away and see if it comes back. You know, many of us, especially women, involve ourselves in a relationship that depends on us giving a shoulder of support and healing in a very traditional sense. Maybe we are being nurtured the other way back with finances. So we are talking about the most traditional relationship. You are not going to have that type of relationship anymore, because independence is going to be very, very important for you, right? And that independence for you can come through some kind of like form of creativity, as I said, picture, writing, expressing, I don't know, YouTube channel. But this can be so important that can take you to the next level. Because this kind of like healing is going to be also healing something that you thought, well, it's maybe a childish dream. It's maybe something that you shouldn't be kind of like going in a direction. And something like that can actually really, really come to the fore and actually play a really, really important role. The Hermit card is your card, and you probably are way more familiar with this card than I can ever describe. Because, look, there is this basically big gate over here. We see this like lock. We see a whole bunch of keys. Are you going to get the right key the very first time around? Well, maybe not. But the truth is, you have to keep trying. You have to keep going through it. The Hermit is card that basically talks about wiseness. It doesn't mean that you're isolated from the other people, but you might feel that way when you kind of like realize that you need to detach. You're going to have that fight in you, that conditioning, well, I should be doing this way, but the other part of you is going to say, but that doesn't really work for me, I cannot do it. So you need to kind of like find that equilibrium, because the touch card in the other decks is showing this kind of justice, who is kind of having these two scales, and she's measuring these kind of like two sides. So that's what's going to basically be going through your head. In which direction do I go? And how do I go? How do I go about it? What are the consequences, kind of a thing? You're not necessarily trying to be a good girl who is going to obey somebody's kind of like orders, right? But at the same time, I really believe anything traditional or anything that, you know, you feel the grounds, kind of like rituals are important, it's going to be really hard for you to kind of like violate this. But then this card appears. I don't know, can you see it? It's called traveling. So there is this mountaintop again. Only thing, it's not somebody what they think they are, it's the real one. And then can you see it? There is a little dot over here on this mountaintop. Let me just, you see this dot? There's like somebody traveling over here. So the tiny figure moving on the path through this beautiful landscape, like with the sun over here, right, is not really concerned about a goal. This basically is really, he or she knows that journey is the goal, and sort of like each step on the path is kind of like really, really important. So when this card appears in the reading, it's indicates time of movement and change. So that's going to be possibly a physical movement from one place to the next, or inner movement from one way of being to another, which I clearly see over here. You guys are so opening up, and it's kind of like that light up kind of like a thing that I'm really picking up, because look at this, like this inner light coming through. Remember that I was talking about the beauty. You are going to shine. You're going to be so beautiful starting somewhere in July and until the end of the year. But like in particularly from July to the end of your birthdays in September, this is going to be really, really prominent, right? So it's also going to be probably meeting people from different cultures, maybe people who are deeply spiritual. All of a sudden different things are going to be very, very appealing to you. You will be expressing yourself differently. You never know, maybe you're going to join my tarot school at this time, right? It's also going to be a sense of adventure, a sense of growth, sense of like getting to know who you really are, embracing these new concepts. So that kind of like new attitude of openness and of acceptance is going to be very, very important over here. So having said all of that, the very last quarter is going to be reassessment. You are going to create something so huge. Like the second and third quarter are going to make huge impact in your basically year. Then here we have this island card. So in this island card, we have this kind of like solitary basically tree on this island, and it's like such a lovely, and I don't know if you can see the colors as much as I can. It's like so beautiful, a little kind of like purple tree. Also you have the crown chakra, which is purple as well, so I really feel it's connecting. So looking at that, it really evokes feelings. We see this kind of like glossy reflection and the tree in basically full blossom that's kind of like really standing in spite of the storm. But then is that like really kind of like saying to us, do you really focus on these clouds, or do you really focus on the light coming through? Whenever I see trees like that, and I know I got a little bit crazy recently, I'm having really hard times buying cut flowers for somebody, because I don't really want to cut somebody's life, even if that's the plant. Because I read this like study that they actually did a study coming to scissors to plants, and they were measuring, and they realized that there is a huge stress, enormous stress that they feel. So they know that's happening, and guess what? They are defenseless. They cannot do anything, and they are there to nurture us. So when I see something like that, almost like brings kind of tears to my cold Aquarian eyes, saying, oh my gosh, how did that tree make it in spite of everything? So I really think like here, maybe you were wondering like this kind of like new concept, how to do it, in which direction to go, right? Here is like basically saying kind of like spend some time for that solitude in the silence, for maybe pilgrimage, for maybe meditation, from maybe kind of prayer, from maybe time with basically the people in your church, whatever kind of like works for you. But I really feel more or less is going to be on your own. And it's on your own, something that you're going to really enjoy it, right? Where you're going to be this tree, you're going to basically win in spite all the odds. But also you need to give yourself, and that's specifically good advice for you guys, something very unstructured. Kind of like spend maybe an entire day by yourself every week that is completely unplanned, unstructured, and you kind of like are going to start moving in this kind of like new direction. And I think you guys absorb lots of worry and try to solve problems for the others, and you don't even realize that you accumulated, and that you need to kind of like have your own kind of like way to kind of like get rid of it. So this is really talking about passing through any kind of like barriers. Look at the tree, kind of like had been seed at one point, and then seed kind of like started to kind of like bud out, and one thing after another, the storm was like not just like washing it off and it just like died. It actually did survive. Just imagine against all of these powers and the winds and everything in the open sea like that. So this is really talking about that you will probably be that kind of like receiving rod for a whole bunch of emotions and things that are coming through you, and kind of like that solitude and that meditation is going to be also probably something you're starting over here, because it's going to give you this understanding that you kind of like know things in a different way from the other people. You know, when Freud said cigar, sometimes it's just a cigar. That is a very truthful saying, but sometimes it's completely different meaning, and that's the meaning of the different meaning is going to really be highly understood to you in the very end. So it's going to be something that will be very, very important. Now, interestingly enough, that I see here emotional loss, and I never like to see this card. I am wondering here what's going to happen, because it's going to be nurturing year. Maybe you're going to, remember how I said, overly idolize someone, or maybe somebody is going to over idolize you, because that actually has to go two ways. You really this year are going to make sure that you tell people, look, I'm only a human. I make mistakes like everybody else, and I also need somebody who I can trust and who I can depend on. Here it's saying change your focus. Look, we see this like topiary here disappearing, and we're seeing something kind of like being boxed in. So it's simply saying you need to pass behind these boundaries that maybe you have set for yourself, that things have to go further in the future. So all of these answers are going to come to you. Maybe some answers that come to you would mean that you need to let go of someone. Maybe it's going to be a sad decision that you have to make, because look at him, like he has like this basically Fibonacci, basically Nautilus over here, which is basically the essence of life, this 3.14, right, concept. And sometimes it's just understanding that somebody maybe was just basically a part of our journey, but when you got there, you maybe have nothing in common, right? It happened many times. You sit in the bus next to somebody, you have a great time, but then, you know, you exchange the phone number, the destination, you meet again, and all of a sudden the connection is not there. Because I actually do feel that most likely, guys, is going to be you. That is going to be completely new person. By the end of 2019, you're going to emerge as somebody deeper, better, bigger, more understanding yourself, more understanding who you need and what you need. And you're not going to be brutal about it or abstract about it. You're going to be actually very pragmatical about it and really spend time to see what changes have to happen. This could actually really even mean kind of like dealing with your own family, because interestingly enough, both cards that I consider traveling cards, you're having it over here. Whether or not you might move away, whether or not new things will happen, the Six of Air really talks about bridge over troubled waters. So maybe some tough decisions will be made, and then it's going to be time to move on. And move on it is. It's going to happen from moment to moment, right? So as you can see, this person is kind of like moving. I don't know, can you see it here? Everything seems to be very abstract over here. We see the city over here, we see the stones, but we also see the stairs over here. So it's really saying that everything is going to be sort of like a moving target, but this person is absolutely balancing every step of the way, right? So everything else might be changing, but kind of like it's going with the flow. Remember what I said? Try to do something unstructured. Try to do something that is going to be completely different. It's going to add a little bit different dimension, right? So this really card challenges us to move away from anything that is like preoccupying us with maybe other spaces or other times. We kind of like have to be present over here, right now. And this is going to be very, very important. And that right here, right now, I'm literally translating like what is there for you, my dear Virgo. What is right now here for you. So you need to be available to what comes your way as it comes. So do not worry if you stumble or if you fall. Just pick yourself up. You need to just dust yourself up, have a good laugh, and carry on, right? It's as simple as that. So I'm going to now break it down in the second part per basically segment of our lives and just like see kind of like how to put that in a perspective. And then we are going to do as the last part Lenormand, and I can kind of like give you more who, what, when, and that sort of like down and dirty. So let's start the second part. Hi Virgo. So what I'm doing here, I am actually marrying tarot with astrology. What is really, really important is that we have two cards which are karma cards. There are also cards that you had over there. I'm going to show you the overlaps that we had over there. So let me just check. So this card is this card of justice. Remember, I was telling you about the scales over here that is kind of like making a new appearance. We do have this laughing Buddha coming back over here as well. So that's going to be house number 7. Relationships are going to be great. Then we have this 6 of air as well reappearing. So you had something similar to 5 of wands, not exactly identical. So that's it so far. So let me start. The very first house over here is the house of you, the house of appearance and the outward personality, and it's kind of like really awareness of yourself. This is really lovely card to get. First of all, we are getting 3 again, right? So we are in a year number 3, like you are reaching the potential of the year around your birthday, which kind of does make sense. So here is like this card, which one of huge exceptions in tarot. Usually 8 is, or any number that goes higher, the more messages you have. But in this particular thing is like almost like deciding what to study, because you already know what you want to get and you know it's going to take some time to get there. So this is the card of expertise. This is this card of team building. This is the card of understanding how to move forward. So you're going to be improving yourself many ways. You're going to look really good at work. You're going to kind of like maybe dress for success. Maybe you're going to really figure out what is the basic long-term gain. So it's kind of like working it backwards, right? You know how most people fail because they set themselves up for failure. Oh, I have to lose 100 pounds. Then you lose 20 pounds and then you gain 5. Oh, I'm such a failure, and you give it up. No, if you're going to go toward that goal, you're going to kind of keep going, knowing that maybe it's going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's very, very important. Because from the earth and your earth sign, you have these 3 cards and they will be really, really connecting. So I'm going to be telling you what is this all about, and it's going to be really, I kind of like do have a little glimpse of what's going to happen. Remember the trial, kind of like raising from that lion, being the unexpected. We are going to get there. The number 2 is really talking about money and possessions and values and skills. And there is like some kind of like battle. Usually 9s are, but also you have a 9 and 1, so something that needs to shift, and it's kind of like hard for you to shift. I really see that it's like second house, which is the house of personal resources, and also your immediate environment is connected. Maybe somebody is, as I said, treating you as a wallet. Maybe somebody has been a drain. The personal resources are not only money, because I see here you're kind of like tired of doing something. You just like, you know that certain things are coming to an end. It's almost like you are resuscitating a dead body over here, right? Because again, this is about skills. It's about building yourself up. But it looks like that maybe you have some negative people who are disintegrating you, who you're just like not seeing the point of fighting over certain things. It's going to be very, very important over here that you're going to kind of like say, okay, maybe I want all of that to happen, but now I'm realizing that I really have to focus on that. So this is kind of like that, also understanding how to actually really, really go about that. This is about that, as I said, your immediate environment and mental activity and siblings, communication. And I really think that something that happened in the past, that you maybe try to work on either relationships, or as I said, maybe you were going in a direction that you thought was really valuable. Maybe you thought you're going to kind of raise above others in terms of, your value, kind of like I have a higher degree and I should probably get more money. And maybe this is not materializing. So in a sense, it's going to be kind of like positioning yourself a little bit. It's going to be a little bit confusing how to go about that. But this is going to be really, really important, right? Because this is the outer world and this is the inner world. And inner world is going to be really confusion. Look at this blindfold lady over here. She kind of like has this fear. And I was talking a lot about fear. I'm not going to repeat it. And this is exactly where you're happening in this inner world. This is about I nurture. Remember, the nurturing is a big, big theme for you. So you are Virgo, not 100%, you're going to be 1000%. And you are the subject, not everybody else. And I think that's what's going to happen. Everybody used to you jumping and doing things for the others, and you just realize that you have your own wounds and these people are not even valuing what you are doing. They're simply just now accepting that this is just normal, that kind of like you are being the one on call and doing the stuff. And this was not hard for you, but now you actually really need to carve that place for yourself. It's kind of like hard for you to kind of like really do that. I can see that, but this is absolutely necessary to do that. Because this is the house of you, of romance, of children, of fun, and pun as well, and creativity. And so you have this justice reversed, right? So it is kind of like realization of what things are not in balance. This being a karma card, right? And also another kind of karma card we have in the house number 9, which is about expanding horizons. It is both of them being reversed. And as I said, it might feel at some points this year, well, you're not getting your way, the luck is against you. The truth is, karma is actually making this happen because you have maybe trying to continue to push yourself in direction where you really shouldn't be going, right? The daily life that I see over here, right? That's kind of like how you serve, is all about that balance. And I really think that balance is something that is like really missed over here. And also fun. I also see that it was all service and dedication and devotion, but you really didn't kind of like do lots of traveling, or there's like something that you really like that kind of like really is energizing for you, that you kind of like felt you cannot do it. You kind of like almost like felt that it's going to look selfish, and you need to kind of like do that literally this year. Now the Knight of Pentacles over here is talking about that work and health and service and self-improvement. And remember how that rune Vunyo came reversed, because it's talking about, not everybody is going to be your friend. To me, this is always a friend card, but it's also about kind of like moving it slow. Maybe bigger patience is important. Maybe bigger reflection is important. Maybe bigger space is important to really kind of like find and kind of conclude that kind of like solutions or resolutions of things that you need to do. And then good news. We are getting these lovely cards in the house of the partner. And this is not just about romance. This is about marriage. This is about other partnerships. And this is kind of like flying colors. This is like 10 of water. It's the best card you can get over there. Look at that, happiness. And there is like this equality exchange. You see, the whole year is going to be building those relationships to that point that they're like so satisfactory, they're kind of blossoming. So it's going to be for you, I need to go and get there. You're not going to kind of like negotiate, well, let me have a relationship with this good half of the time, and half of the time I have to put a tail in between my legs. It's not going to work for you anymore. As I said, this is not self-pity party year anymore. In the house number 8, which is like the shared resources, this is house ruled by Scorpio. We are talking about sex and death and letting go. It could be also that you're connected with somebody on a spiritual level. The high priestess is usually that intuition. The high priestess is also kind of like the choice between the good and the bad, right? The high priestess is also kind of like, have you earned me kind of a thing, right? So you will need to let go of the old in order to let in the new. It's going to be extremely, extremely important, because you see, this is like what you're getting here in the number 9, that higher education and philosophy and the travel. And the travel is there. So be also very careful that actually when you do planning, you over plan. I know that you're good planners, but you need to over plan your travel, because things actually can kind of like go sideways on that particular level, because the Wheel of Fortune was reversed. But even though if things go sideways, things will actually get resolved in a really, really good way. So I would not really take this too much, but that means if you're traveling, make sure you have health insurance, make sure you maybe take the necessary meds with you, maybe for more days than you have it, just sort of like to cover yourself in the case of emergency. This also represents outer world. This is like 10th house talks about I achieve, right? So it is career status and reputation. It's going to be, again, establishing boundaries and seeing how much you can push, and also making sure you're not allowing others, right, in your own space. This is kind of like this, not necessarily a bad card. In fact, it's probably a good card. It's kind of like you're taking power. You maybe kind of like caved in, or you kind of like always kind of like obeyed, but now it's going to be that creativity that is kind of like waking up in you, where kind of like maybe you're going on a new position, because this is that aspiration. It's also group contribution. It's kind of understanding finally what you're bringing to the table, what you can do, who you are, and who you are essentially that you can do. So maybe you were just a shadow person and you're saying, okay, now I'm ready. It's also the bridge over troubled waters over here that really talks about that. It is like one of my favorite houses, because it's the house of friends and groups and aspirations. So as I said, you might actually have some people who will let you down, and maybe they did let you down more times than once. Maybe you were just forgiving, and you're going to forgive them again. There is forgiveness here, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be foolish this time around. You're just going to realize that you really don't have time for every Dick and Harry in your life, and the time is very precious, and the time consists of creating all these boundaries and nurturing yourself and the close ones to you. So it's better to give a bigger share to less people than spread yourself too thin. And I really feel you'll be transitioning and moving away from some people that are not necessarily making a positive contribution in your life. In house number 12, and in house number 12 in my personal chart is actually Virgo, but here you actually have, this is talking about spiritual life, and you have the Hermit reversed, and this is really going to be about that solitude and transcendence and self-sabotage. You guys are not going to be any more ordinary. You know how earth signs, they have this like programming. I have to have a husband, a car, 2 dogs, 1.5 kids, sort of like the statistical thing. No. Remember, the child is emerging. It's going to be really different. It's going to be much, much different. The Hierophant means doing things in like a little bit unorthodox way, where things can actually really happen differently. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be a really, really good thing, because you are figuring out that you're maybe swimming against the current. You were going upstream. It was really, really hard. So it's kind of like, what was a net benefit? Yes, you actually did learn things. You are kind of stronger. You're getting better. But you're also understanding that certain people took advantage of that. So now you're actually understanding this bigger picture. And even though you're kind, you're also going to be a little bit kind of like angry with realization that some people kind of like took advantage of you. And I think when I see this volcano that you had there, because that's what I really wanted to see, I don't really think it's going to be a big blow up, but it's going to be maybe that you might lash out, possibly with your parents. It's possibly because that you're repressed within your family, something like that. It can come there, but it also can come basically to what you consider fun, that you really actually maybe neglected yourself and people just took advantage of your good and of your kindness. But it's really, really time to kind of like do it in a different way. And here I really think it's about this positioning, right? And things that need to be done, right? Because you also had giving and receiving card over here, right? And you see everybody has something to contribute. So why is only you that you're giving? Just because maybe people don't have material goods, that doesn't mean that they don't have other things to actually really give. So this is like really something to put in perspective and to realize. And okay, let's now do Lenormand part, and that we can put it all into some kind of like timelines. Hi Virgo, so here is the last part, the Lenormand. So let's see what we can see over here. So what is really lovely that I'm seeing over here is basically where the negative cards are located. Just as you know, every divination kind of like tool has plus and minuses, and here they have like the sinister 7, sort of like 7 really, really bad cards, such as Coffin, Cross, Mountain, the Whip, the Fox can be bad, and then also we have the Scythe. So most of them are sort of like located in the past, which really tells me that maybe you have been dealing with some kind of hardships and struggle. Some of you may have had health issues, especially if you're a male. It could be also issue of a heart, that kind of like maybe it was something that you needed to check, or it could be cholesterol, that kind of like a things, if it comes to terms of kind of like how to look at it like from the health stand. Now, if you really look, we have the lady and we have the gentleman. Here we can differentiate the gender, but generally most of us kind of like go through the similar things. And there is like this ship. Remember, I did see that travel theme even in your kind of like annual reading, especially the last 2 quarters. Here it's really talking that this is going to be something really, really important for you. You might be actually dating foreigners. You might be dealing with maybe some kind of like paperwork. Ladies, you might be dealing with somebody who has children, or you might be even adopting children this particular year. If you have been already talking about that, or if you have been already dealing with that something bust, some kind of good news can come through very, very soon. You see, the child here doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I know you're going to get a baby. Yes, of course, it can mean literally that. But the child actually has multiple other things. It's number 13, which in tarot is the death. And the death always talks about transformation, very much like the child card here. So you can see how the same card has different interpretation in different decks. It's a very positive card. It's a beginning. But it's a beginning over something that has been already worked on. You already had placed kind of like your fingers on something. It is also about the trust. It's kind of like going in a new direction, because the child is in the house of the crossroads, in the house of the paths. So sort of like, when you have a child, like you're realizing that you're at the very least next 20 years are dedicated, right? Same as if you have a pet. For some of us, our pet is our child. It's very, very innocent. It's very, very important. But this is also about innocence. Remember the story that I was telling you about the camel, the lion, and the child. And it looks like this is really something that here is talking about when the sun will shine. Generally, when I'm doing private readings, I'm kind of like looking this as a present line. But for you, I'm seeing that there is like some culmination. And for you, it's going to start to happen in the second part of the year, and in particular around your birthday, because the sun over here, I'm more seeing when the sun is in your sign. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's really interesting. And the sun is in a house of a child. Some of you might really get pregnant really early in a year, and the child would really come around that time. Something is really, really good brewing over here, ladies. There is like love coming, and it could be marriage. It could be something that is really, really important, and it could be also something from the past, because the Lilith is in the house of the sun. Maybe some of you had issues. I see that some of you maybe even had a third party interfering, and maybe even for some of you, relationship ended. And kind of like, it kind of like really felt karmic, and it felt that you see this mountain, which is the camel, in that particular card that I showed you. It was this burden. Maybe some of you couldn't get pregnant. Maybe some of you have been dealing with how to move forward, because this is a healing card and this is a healing card. I really think in particular, if you are a male Virgo, you really need to pay attention to your heart. And especially when it comes to vigorous activity, I would say be careful. I would say that some of you are going to push too much, especially stress might really get to you. Some of you might really do too much at work. Be very careful. Again, as I said, for you guys, this is a year of balance. It's a year of that is going to be so smooth sailing that you're just not going to believe your luck. It's going to be the year where financially you're going to do well and you're going to be lucky. Nothing to really, really worry about. So the center over here of the reading, what I'm looking is I'm seeing that you're really hesitant. You have been going, like, let's imagine somebody's going through the storm and the sand is in your face and the snow is in your face and the stone are you kind of like in your face, and you're like injured and you're wondering, can I just survive this? Do I just give up? But I can't give up, right? Everything is going through your head. So if the sun all over kind of like comes over and the snow and the storm stops, you might just go, okay, you know, I'm not ready, just like I meant to say it's over. You're still kind of like going kind of like a little bit under the radar. You're still kind of like wondering like how much more you need to kind of like feel firm in the situation. So I really feel that some of you are still not going to kind of like jump and stay proud until certain things happen. Remember how in the reading you had volcanoes. So this whip in this particular Lenormand can actually signify the same, because like when you hit with the whip, the dust kind of like raises up and a whole bunch of things are brought to the surface, right? That's why I warn you about your health, because something can be extremely exhausting, and it could be something that maybe didn't want to hear. It could be a little bit of a surprise, and it could be kind of like foretelling the end of certain troubles over here. Whip is not necessarily a negative card, it's a neutral card, but it can talk about a repetition of the events that no longer serve you, because it looks like you're going to cut things that have been done in a kind of like really kind of like normal way. This is also talking about disruptions. There was some kind of like sexual situation and heated discussions, and you know, it can be kind of like one of the most difficult cards to read, especially because it's the moon. It's in between the moon and the fish. This kind of like, and the fox. These three cards are really talking about a work situation. Are you guys really pushing your career that much that it can cost you your health? If you kind of like really think about it the way I just said it, you really, really need to think about it, because this also could mean that there have been relationships about, you know, there have been arguments about love and relationships, right? Now, as far as relationships, it could have been arguing, it could have been deciding where you will live, because it could be that somebody is abroad, it could be that there is like a distance, or it could be that this distance meant that somebody's like spending way too much time at work, and you're thinking, okay, well, great, I'm going to have like a ring on a finger, but this person is never at home, so I'm not going to have that husband or this wife. So it has been kind of like something that needed to have the communication, and looks like attempts to communicate didn't really go and end up being fruitful. But that's going to change. It's going to change significantly, right? Like all of a sudden the door is opening and the sun is shining and all these agreements are being reached. The garden means like feeling happy. If you're looking for a partner, it's going to be lots of dating. And as I said, sometimes it looks like that, ladies, you might meet a partner with a child, right? Or the partner who is not going to mind the child at all. In fact, is going to look for somebody where he can actually take a part, not only partner role but also parent role, right? This kind of like is very interesting when I have the lilies in the sun house, because that's obviously connecting over here. Lilies can talk again about doctors, and it can talk about somebody who has gray hair or salt and pepper hair, or also somebody who is bald. But that person is going to bring you immense happiness. The only thing I would say it's sort of like come in a way is this card. It's the book that comes in the house of the mice. So neither of these cards are really good, and now they're really connecting. However, mice is coming in the house of the bouquet, which is an extraordinary good card. So it's kind of minimizing, and this is some damage that maybe you have experienced in the past, maybe something you had to deal with, something that you just like never felt being resolved. And the book really talks about learning things, learning how to go about things, right? So now it's closed. So when it starts to open, you need to kind of like pay attention to those details. Remember, you had this card where I said it's going to be that you're excelling at things and expertise and teamwork. So that's going to be something around that, kind of like how to get along. The house, you might actually do really good with real estate transaction. You might really do good with sale of your property. That is really kind of like well forecasted. Be very careful that you clear all your communications, right? Because your communications are going to ask for clarity, right? Because the clouds are basically in the house of communication, but this is the card of stars, which is in a card of the whip. So it can actually have those heated arguments. So I do see that with some people, you're going to kind of like, they're going to activate. You see, mountain plus the whip would be that volcano, which we have seen. But again, there's like not much to worry, because it looks like that there are some people from whom you already expect that. But rivals and people who have been issue are all basically packaged in the past. As far as relationship and marriage, this as well is kind of like repeating the same message. The anchor in the house of the heart means something is getting locked in a good way. And plus the ring over here that is in the house of the letter, which was the opening over here, clearly talks about that it could be maybe some contractual arrangements, a prenup or something like that, or it could be like something that has to be arranged in order for kind of like doing something. Maybe some of you got divorced last year, and that can actually talk about divorce papers. So yes, it can mean that as well. But nonetheless, I do see dating. I do see success. I do see that it's going to be a huge love affair, ladies. That's going to be a big heart, and that big heart is going to shine. It's going to be in love. And as I said, it could be a foreigner. It could be meeting somebody like in a different place, in a different city from where you are, or even overseas. So this actually sounds really, truly wonderful. So let me get one more last card to seal this reading. And I really, really hope, guys, that you enjoyed this. So here we go. Give me one more advice for Virgo. So from all of these messages, for these Virgos who are actually listening to my channeling, what do they need to absorb if they just absorb one little thing? And you're getting cleaning house. I really think this is also referring back to who is staying in your life and who is not staying in your life. You know that you are probably reaching that edge of how much you can give. So anyway, let me read this for you. It says, it is time to clear the clutter to make way for better things. When you see the cleaning house card in a reading, it's time to declutter your life. Get rid of unwanted things in your physical home and release what you no longer want or truly need. Is there any unfinished business you should address? Thoughts, memories, and emotional baggage must be swept out of your house as well. Your conscience must be clear for you to move freely in the world. Celebrate a spring cleaning and feel the freedom as you make way for much better things. Look at what you have resisted discarding and be honest about its value. Be honest and clean house. So guys, that's that volcano. That volcano has to happen for you because it sounds like that you will go out of your way to accommodate people and to work and to kind of like be the team player, to kind of like acknowledge everybody. The truth is that this year you will be the one who will be shining. You will be the one who will be on a pedestal. And that many people because of that will be envious, greedy, or feeling, you know, that something is slipping through their fingers. Just because you're donating and donating and donating, it doesn't mean you have to continue going on. So if harassment starts, it looks like, you know, cleaning a house is going to come to play. And again, look, 3 is kind of showing up here as well, but also 7. And 7 is really talking about the spiritual lessons that are fully absorbed and actually really they need to go. And not to mention that for the end, we have this kitty over here. There is like this new shift, a new beginning in a really good direction for you. So my dear Virgo, thank you again for being here for me, for supporting the channel. I really hope you continue. Thanks very much. And I hope you're going to visit me on Facebook and Instagram. And until the next time, I wish you all the best. Take care and happy 2019.